welcome to the second webinar session of the Tobago Heritage Festival 2021. Our theme this year, Resilient Tobago, Remembering Her Roots with Responsibility. Today we look at traditions and innovations of the Tobago Heritage Festival over the years. Of course, this would include looking at the evolution of the festival over those many years, and we celebrate 34 years this year. This would entail this evening a look at the events, the staging, production, the writing, the performances, authenticity, the recordings, assets, the rustic nature, IP, documentation, sustainability of the festival, costuming, opening night, themes, village selection, use of technology, management of the festival, and certainly the coordination of villages. The overall theme of the Heritage Festival over the years, in terms of the goal and the objective, was the festival was conceptualized to preserve the cultural traditions of Tobago. And by all means, Tobago has been doing that each year through selected themes. In the National Archives, it says, 3 main reasons for the Tobago Heritage Festival: to develop an event in Tobago by which the island could be easily recognized locally, regionally, and internationally, to assist in the preservation of the island's indigenous art forms and the heritage which, for some, is slowly disappearing, and last but not least, to sell Tobago as a holiday destination and to develop it as an event which can contribute to the island's cultural, social, and economic development. So with that background painted there, I'm pleased to present to you an amazing and highly knowledgeable panel, which includes Mr. Roel Axbach Titus, Mrs. Deborah Moore Miggins, Miss Miriam Scott, and Dr. Verlene Bob Lewis. So first of all, I would like to ask each of my panelists, and I would start with Roel Axbach Titus, to just give us a 1-minute blurb about your own involvement in the Tobago Heritage Festival.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for having me on the show this evening. Roel Titus is the name. Axbach is just a sobriquet in Calypso. I've been involved in the festival for as long as I could remember. Actually, my first involvement on stage was in 1989. We had just returned, that is the Tobago Folk Performing Company, had just returned from Italy. And John, you should remember that. And we went straight into the festival with about 2 weeks to prepare. After that, well, I was always in touch with the management of the festival. And eventually, Ms. Pearl Solomon, who became Secretary for Culture, asked that Mount St. George get involved. And funny enough, you know, as soon as that request was made, I jumped onto the theme bongo because I wanted to do rite of passage, you know, and we did it and kept doing heritage shows after that.
Good. Thanks a lot there, Ax. Dr. Verlene Bob Lewis, just a little intro on your own involvement in heritage so it paints the context.
Yes, thank you. I have been involved from its inception, from the first year of the festival. I want to go a little way back, because I was involved when we had the conference at Mount Irving, and I was the secretary of that conference. And then that was in 86 or thereabout. The year may escape me now. And then I started with the first Heritage Festival with the initial villages. And after that, I was responsible for producing lekotos, tales, and superstitions for 11 consecutive years.
So let me just interject, because I think it's important what you just said. In the first webinar, it was actually to be spoken about. That conference, I think, just situate that in our discussion just a little bit on what that conference was about, because it's very important.
Right. So that conference was held from September 10th to the 12th in 1984. So I give you the wrong date. But it took some time to actually put everything together. And the first Heritage Festival took place in 1987. So it was held, and where we had a number of presenters on different aspects of the culture in Tobago. So we had on architecture, on folk singing, on dance, on the speech band, culinary arts, art and craft. It was a wide range of issues and topics that we dealt with in that conference at Mount Irving. And from that and the contents of that conference is what led to the first Tobago Heritage Festival.
Beautiful, beautiful. Miriam, I would ask you now to just give an opening blurb there on you and your own involvement.
Pleasant afternoon and good evening to my fellow panelists, and thank you all for the invitation to be here. My involvement with the Tobago Heritage Festival would have started from the inception with the Astronauts Dance Company with my uncle, Mr. Henry James, branching off into forming my own company, the Ajoke School of the Performing Arts, and we would have proceeded to participate in the Heritage Festival throughout the years. My initial participation in the festival was dancer, choreographer. I was part of the Tobago Heritage Dance Company at the time, which was a collection of various dancers from different villages from Tobago. In 1999, 1998 and 99, I would have had the opportunity to have Patience Sale taking part in the village production for the Tobago Heritage Festival, where we would have done Festival of Dance, Echoes, and Black Dance. Coming out of that, in 1999, I think, with the Tobago Heritage Festival touring exhibition group, part of that was taken to the United States from Echoes, where we did some of the dances and where I also tutored at Medgar Evers and throughout various parts in New York and Washington, D.C. And I've remained in the festival as a dancer, as a choreographer, Miss Heritage personality, designer, winning number of years, Best Gong, Best Talents with my queens that were in the program or in the competition. I would have migrated to the United States in 2005, and I would have returned to Tobago in 2018. And I just jumped right back into the festival. Wherever my expertise and training is needed, I usually go and assist and help.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you very much for that. And let's move on to Mrs. Deborah Moore Miggins. Just give us a little blurb there on your own involvement in the festival.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. My involvement started somewhere when I became legal officer to the Tobago House of Assembly. That was in around 1988. It may not have been 88 that I was assigned to work with the committee in ways, and I remember clearly some legal issues that were posed in those early years, 88, 89, I would think, people were very concerned about protecting the works that came out of the heritage, copyright, and whether the heritage could ever generate enough income that people like Miriam and all those who worked and danced and played and were performers could live for the year on the revenues and the profits. Now, after that, I was peripherally involved, like because I'm a speech band. Sometimes our group would perform in one of the segments, not opening night. Opening night may not have been. I don't know how it was done those years, but we performed in one of the events. And after that, I'm just on the periphery, enjoying the culture, the heritage, and making myself available.
Right, thanks very much. All right, so the first area I want to talk about is this whole area of authentic presentations and keeping things rustic. But how do we do that when we have the challenges of modernity and we have the challenges now of technology and so on? So I just want a comment from each of you on this issue of authentic productions, because there's a lot of discussion on that area. People are seeing things that, the knowledge bearers would certainly, and those our ancestors would probably, kind of smirk at. So I would like to have some comments on that from each one of you, actually. Let's start with Dr. Bob.
Yes, and it's a conversation that would always take place. But when we look at the origin of the festival, and the word preservation was a key word at that time. And we had to ask ourselves, what are you really preserving? And remember, at the start of it, we really looked at authentic dances. Take, for instance, your reel, your jig, your brush back. There were certain formations that characterize those dances. But now we see where in trying to be too innovative, you see, and I see it, calypso steps coming into those dances. So we are losing the authenticity of those dances, and we have to be very careful. Even the formations, your eight, and I'm sure Mr. Titus will talk more about those as a choreographer himself, will speak of those. So we are losing some of those. The calypso dance is always interpretive, but we have to be careful if we're going to do a reel, a jig, a brush back, that we maintain what those are and not mix them into things to look new. I just want to draw one reference here quickly. I remember one year when we had a spectacular performance, and I wouldn't name the year and I wouldn't name the but it was glamorous. Yeah. At the end of it, you heard, as you were coming out of it, you heard people quarreling, some were dissatisfied, but on the other hand, you heard people, oh Lord, it was spectacular. I was kind of between the two. But if you're talking about traditional Tobago Heritage Festival, where we're trying to preserve something, we have to be very careful that we don't go too far off and lose that traditional aspect of the festival. So we have to be very careful. And I just want to bring one other reference. If, for instance, we talk, and there are two ovens that bear my name somewhere, and if you want to talk about traditions and you want to talk about oven and bread and so on and dirt oven, you don't want to take a stove and put it there and then say, okay, this is a public oven out here. You want to go back to how it is made with the cow dung and the dirt and everything. But then some people know even that you want to make a new thing and call it a old-time traditional oven. So even if we're talking about dances and we're talking about music and all the art, and the cooking, there are some things that that must remain traditional, I think.
Thank you very much there, Dr. Bob. I certainly concur. Let me hear Brother Roll Titus.
Okay, John. In the first place, there's a huge challenge. When we talk about keeping authenticity alive, what is authentic? And how do we take that authenticity and bring it to the stage? Is the authenticity as stage worthy as we require on the stage or the stage desires? Remember, in the Heritage Festival, we have mounting productions that should be both attractive, entertaining, educational, and there will always be slight changes along the way. And that's where the challenge was, to manage these changes. But the authenticity, as Dr. William Bob Lewis said, gave way to other things. A lot of, let's say, the costuming. I see what used to be basic, authentic costumes being crafted to look like carnival costumes. I see steps being converted. As she said, I see steps from particular dances being used in other dances that are normally traditional dances. And it's a confusing kind of thing. She spoke about a spectacular show. We go for the spectacular at the expense of the authentic. The challenge is always going to be there. How we get over that is the other challenge. Are we trained enough to be able to craft productions so that we allow the authentic, whatever presentation, to flow in a way that would link the entire production? That's another challenge. And I think that is one that we have to pay attention to. The way to get over that is by training. In too many instances, we know you learn the game from those who played before. But for some reason, people who never played are teaching those who played before and long before with years of experience and with years of success. And that cannot work. When we talk about losing the traditional approach and the traditional nuances, yes, we are. But this is a huge part of the reason. Too many people are coming on board and they're telling those who were there before, you wrong. This is how it ought to be. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is when people say things that cannot be justified. A couple of years ago, I heard on a radio station, I'm not going to name them, where this young lady, about 24 years old, saying, what I saw in a particular show for Wake and Bongo was exactly what used to happen. And I smiled because I said to myself, Wake and Bongo had a transformation after 1963. Bongo, for one, had almost entirely died. And if you know 23 and you could say that is exactly what was happening, I have a problem with that. So we have to be careful with what we pass on, because each of us is a teacher. Each one of us.
Yep. Very, very important. Good points there, Rol. Deborah, let me hear your take.
I agree with everybody who spoke. But the main thing I like to say is tradition and authentic is relative. It's where we are now in the year 2021. I am sure going back to the year as Rol would have said, in the year 1977, some of the things we do now and we who feel it's authentic today, it will be looked upon by the forefathers with the smirk somebody spoke about. I say, watch them, they don't know this. Because nowhere is it more evident than in speech band for me. Because right. I had the great fortune of going to a band launching I must have been about 14 or 15, I would be 68 or somewhere around.
Yeah.
And what I know the speech band to be and how they delivered, I keep talking about the panache that you don't see at all. You just see them walk around, run around the stage and walk, then some even whine and that kind of thing. So at the point in time in 1968, the speech band I know and saw emerge in the subsequent years was one thing, and I could name in several areas. Look, the skirt Charlie Beat used to wear. Nobody don't dress a speech band with a skirt now. Everybody in their pants, which is also good. But there was a variety. But now is the one thing we just in the pants all the time, right? But there's even the speech making, the extempo, where you could watch a man and drop a speech on him. No, people now have to learn the speech, and if they forget it, they had to go wrong and hope they remember what they learned. But you're supposed to be able to drop the speech there by extempo, find the words to make the punchline and make it humorous. So as time evolves, either people get less energetic, less enthusiastic. The young people don't want to sweat. I don't know what it is. But what is traditional and what is authentic keeps just, the goalpost is moving every year and different things are emerging. I don't know who to blame for, but that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. I know this is one of the I mean, all of you have spoken so far. Miriam, I want to hear your take.
I do endorse everything that was said by the fellow panelists. As a dancer choreographer in this space, speaking about authenticity and tradition, I was one of those dancers that was very fortunate to sit and learn at the feet of the elders. Even right here in my community, Patience, and even right where I am living here right now, this is where dance would have started in Patience, in my grandmother's yard, with my uncle Henry James, may his soul rest in peace. Also, my other uncle Adolphus James Boyle, may his soul also rest in peace. I think what is happening in this space too, dance has become like microwave. Everything got to be quick. What is also happening, what is changing, some of the movements of the traditional dance as well too, is a type of drumming we are also using in our folk dances. Before, the drummers would have had to work with dancers according to the choreographer movements and choreography, so there was partnering. Now, I find personally in this space, drummers, they are playing for dancers. They have their own speed and tempo. Dancers, going the other way. And there is just speed. There is no timing for footage in the choreography, in the movements. So it's becoming confusing. Recently, I had to do the Congo Ballet, which Mr. James would have created here in Sale. I would have been one of the first original dancers of that Congo Ballet. I would have passed it down to persons like my niece, Lisa Maxwell, and it would have shared in the space by Mr. James as well, too. I would have been out of Tobago for approximately 12 years. And even looking at the Tobago Heritage Festival, tuning in, streaming, I too was drawn back with some of the, what we call our traditional folk dances, our authentic dances in this space, because all of a sudden, a ballet dance, which is supposed to be so graceful, start looking like a piqué dance, and a piqué dance started looking like a calypso dance, and limbo, I don't know what was happening with the limbo, because even the execution and the principles of how to limbo and go under the bar, you won't see those execution in a bongo dance. You're not seeing movements like the crochet and certain symbolic and significant movements that are ritual to particular dances, like our heel and toe, our jig, our reel, dances like our ballet dances, whether it's the ballet reel, ballet jig, the Congo ballet. I don't know, it's losing the essence. I work a lot with the young people. Most of them would say that, the elders don't want to teach them anything. And I don't think that is true. I don't think any elder in this space, like Mr. Roll Titus, Dr. Bob, Miss Miggins, if any young person and myself and many others, like persons like Miss Karen Berkeley Charles, young persons coming and asking questions for direction would be turned away. My home personally has become a teaching institution for students preparing for their CAPE exam. My home has become a learning institution for even foreigners wanting to learn our tradition and our authentic dances. And I remember as a child growing up here in my home in Patience Hill, foreigners will come and they will learn to play the pan right here with my father and with my brother. Drummers will come and we would share the drumming and we would learn at the same time too. So I think the drumming as well have a lot to play with some of the dances. Yes, we are moving away from authentic movements and we are not recognizing the frame and shape and pattern of some of the dances. I heard Mr. Axbach also, Mr. Titus, talk about costuming. That's another thing. I think even our ballet dances now are costume are looking to Spanish influence with a very flare, and frill skirts. I remember I was taught by the elders in my community, and we had to do that as dancers when we were preparing our what we call petticoat or slips or our ballet dance. We had to take our time and cut those ribbons, satin ribbons, and make bows and sit there with the elders, the women, and attach our bows to our petticoat or slip. We were taught what that mean when it's okay. Now you look at a piqué dance. Piqué woman could dance and the dancer come out and she just throw herself open and she's just giving all of herself. I was taught that the song that accompany the piqué dance is a young woman who is looking to be what they say to spring, or what the kids say. The flowers on her petticoat represent that she was becoming a woman. She was beginning to flower into womanhood. And she would gracefully open on lap and forelat skirt, teasing the male dancer in the dance until she's comfortable with him. And when she opens, he comes into her. Now, some of the movements are a bit too vulgar, and what bothers me sometimes in this space is that we are passing on these movements to a younger generation without giving them a synopsis or understanding of what movement mean ritually and spiritually in dance, why it is done that way. And I heard, I think it's Dr. Bob Lewis talk about formation and lines. You would have had that in the quadrille dance, even the bongo and the heel and toe and the jig dances. You're not seeing those things again, and it is important because numbers have a significant part to play in your dances. Costume and colors, choice of colors are important. Another aspect that we have to look at is the ritual part, where we bring in the Orisha drumming and dancing into the space. When and where and how should we perform these dances? There must be a reason and a purpose. You just can't go singing Orisha song for Ogun and Shango. These are deities that are recognized and are honored to the worshippers in that particular ritual belief. And we have placed it now as performance pieces in our heritage festival, even in the Prime Minister's Best Village Trophy competition. And if not done properly, sometimes we can get ourselves in a whole lot of trouble.
Thank you very much.
The room should be open for us to really do a little bit more teaching, going back to the community. Community involvement is very, very important. I think we have lost our essence in the community. Nothing is happening in the community much again, and we need to revisit those areas where we bring the communities back alive with the heartbeat and the drum, with the dance, with the drama, and with the music.
Yeah,
and that's my contribution.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Miriam. What I like is that from all four of you, we have had some really, really good contributions. I have a comment here I want to read from an elder, knowledge bearer, who sent this after the first webinar. And I thought that it segues good from what you just said there. She said, I am very concerned that the newbies are studying to be fancy and leaving out that which is real or original. And they further commented, the wedding, for example, has gone to commerce. The folk tales and superstitions have gone to laughs. I think we need to get back some way of getting coordinators to bring back some of the correctness. But I appreciate all the comments. I think the challenge is, I think Deborah is onto something there, that there's going to be dynamism in the arts as it moves along. You know, in reggae, you still have ska. There are people who are ska, you know, they're not moving from ska. There are people who are reggae fanatics, they're not moving from that. And there are people now who are doing dancehall. So maybe there's a role for the traditional, some of the things that are going to come forth from that. But I want to move to staging, right? Which, and by this I mean some of the productions we see. One speaker already alluded to a very historic year when we had a very wonderful spectacle, and some people were concerned that it was carnivalesque and not heritage-less, for want of a better word. But really and truly, we have seen over the years changes from the early kinds of stage to now stage with proper trussing, a lot of lights, some people using screens. I remember one year we did music soundscapes for Lekoto, all right, which was songs to accompany some of the actors and what they were doing and to give it all this Gaulish feel. Let me hear some thoughts there, Verlene, on this area of stage productions over the years.
And yes, it really comes down to staging. And I want to add competition. So even as Deborah spoke about the speech band, we always have competitions in Tobago, speech band, dance, music. And whatever somebody does and that whatever they did won, it becomes the model for other people to follow. Just because of what they presented on the stage. So what is happening in speech band now, and God bless his soul, where Henry James is trying to bring it back. He brought it back halfway, but we didn't get full way. When you go up there, what looks good? The costuming, and it must look a particular way. So nobody's going back to what the costume should be or should have been. And yes, because of stage, it's more staging than innovation. What we're looking pretty on the stage, we're looking good. So that's happening with the costumes. You want to make sure when you go up there, your costumes could cover, if possible, the entire stage. So you make the skirts, as Miriam was saying, as wide as possible, and you throw it that way and you throw that the other way. So we have to do staging. So a lot of the villages, a lot of the groups in particular are doing what looks good on stage. And we have to be very, very, very careful about what we do. But then it also has to do with competition. And when we have competitions and we have judges, and those judges aren't briefed properly, or the judges don't have an idea of what the dance should look like, what is an authentic folk song, what speech band should be, and they look at the most spectacular thing, what looks good to the eye, and they said, okay, you are first, you are second, and you are third. And we see that happening. And as I told you, whatever wins becomes the gold standard. So everybody starts practicing what that person, you see what they had, how the costume and how the hair tie and and we pick up all of that. The young people are looking at it and say, aha, this look good, they won, so this is what we're going to do. So we have a lot of that happening in terms of stage. Yes, there must be innovation. And maybe, because I have been to festivals. I went to a festival in Dominica once. I went in Grenada to some community activities once. And they try to keep it authentic. So maybe we have to look at two things. The traditional, so there must be some places where you go and you see traditional folk dance, hear traditional songs, and eat traditional food and all like that. And there must be also the path for innovation. I don't know how it will be done, but we have to be able to maintain some aspects, even as people are very, very innovative. And yes, we want people to be creative and innovative, but if we want to lose what we're supposed to be preserving, as was discussed in the conference.
Yeah, I want AXBAC to jump in here a bit on that. In terms of the stadium, what you have seen over the years.
Well, what I have seen is a whole lot of stuff just bundled together. For me, a production that is a heritage show must have a beginning, it must have a development towards a climax. If this is not happening, we're going to have a problem. Because you have to be able to tell a story It must begin someplace, it must develop in a particular way and end with a crescendo, if you will. I don't think that most of the productions we see, and I'm talking as someone who has come out of the Western background, when you do a production, you are not supposed to just say, we got to put a dance here, we got to put a song here, we got to do a thing here. No, that's not how it's supposed to be. And I have a problem when people do not make the whole thing tie up in a way that tells a story that people will remember and relate to. And this is why I had a problem when the Golden Lane show was taken out of heritage for whatever reason. And then you jump straight into the Mariah show. And then in the Mariah show, I asked who used to put these productions together. Did anybody vet these, and sometimes it becomes abrasive because people feel they're just getting on their case and you're against them and all that. But this is not what it was about. It was always about how do you introduce the fact that these two people are going to get married. When the courtship started, how did the permission to go from godfather and child parents to the people who are supposed to get married and all that? There's a build-up, there's a whole sequencing. And I think we lost all of that because we didn't collaborate. We didn't sit and talk together and say, well, look, hey, this is how it is to be done. This is how it used to be done. And in this way, people can follow. There has to be a development. And if we are aiming at producing, let's say, videotapes and other stuff for sale, we have to be able to have that kind of structure play a part in it. It is embarrassing, and you walk into any video shop anywhere and you could buy 100 videotapes from the Caribbean with stories featuring theater arts. You can't find anything on Tobago. It's just not right. And we just keep going along the same lines all the time, spending more money, having the same result all the time. We're not getting forward.
Yeah, that's Alex. Deborah, there's a nice segue for us to go to documentation because I have that on my list of things. And Dr. Bob, because Dr. Bob, you had a book on games. Was it games people used to play? And I think Deborah had some literature. Proverbs, that's it. Sorry, Proverbs. I have a copy. But let's talk a bit about that over the years in terms of how have we done with that? Because I think innovatively, I know we have worked on things like the recording. We have done 2 major recordings of folk songs and folk groups in Tobago, one during my time in the 90s and one during Lois Leslie's time. I don't know if there was another officially commissioned CD that was done beyond that. I can't recall any beyond that. The Woyo Yo Yo song was theme for many years. But beyond that, let's talk a bit about the documentation time.
Yes, and Lois's time was my time. Both of us were there together, 1997 to 98. So we were in that same era. And yes, we had produced a CD there. I don't know where it is, what has become of it, and we got some sold. I remember when we toured, and that same tour that my mom spoke about, she was there on that tour when we traveled to the US to sell the heritage and to display our traditions. I asked recently of somebody who used to help taping those programs, what has become of all those shows over the years? I was told something that was very disturbing, that they had the tapes, and anytime the videographers run out of tapes, they just tape over another one. So we would have lost most of those original, those that we had over the years that we could have even documented now for sale as stories, as Mr. Titus spoke about. We have lost them. It is my hope now that the new ones that they don't tape on those. Well, we have new forms of technology now.
That's
and
right.
They could be whatever MP4, whatever, and you have them and you keep them. But
digital storage. Yeah.
Because I was asking about a particular production, and I was the person to start, and I was on Lekoto, and I used to act. And I went out on the stage and I had some corn to feed me for. I used to have real fowl. And in those days, Lekoto was not just for a laugh. It used to be entertaining, educational, and a lot of those stories were true. And I went out and I showed the corn and said, come, croak, 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 and the whole crowd went up in laughter. And I just reminded them, this is something that people used to do long ago. And I wanted to find that tape, but that's nowhere to be found. So I don't know what could be done even from the villages themselves, with producers themselves. You depend on the heritage, the committee to do, or you can't do all of that. So there must be some structure for documentation. I remember some years ago, there was a committee, or there was an arm of the assembly, of the heritage that was supposed to be responsible for documentation. But these ought to be documented. If you hear, do we have anything of the first heritage festival? And at that time, there were cameras around. Everybody didn't have a cell phone, but there were cameras, and people used to take pictures. But we used to prevent the crowd from taking. But maybe we should have allowed the crowd to take pictures. We might have found some now. So there were people responsible for taking, for capturing the data, but then they lost it after a while. So we have to make sure that we have that and we keep it and have them well tagged and archived so that we could retrieve them from time to time. Because even, and I agree that even as Deborah who said it, after a time, what is happening in 2021, when you reach 2050, it will not happen like that. But you may want to see what it used to look like. So we have to document. That's very important.
Yeah, the innovation would work even now beautifully, because now we now have YouTube. We now have so many other platforms to store this stuff, and that's actually what we're doing here is a good example. Deborah, Wayne.
I wrote a book, The Caribbean Proverbs That Raised Us, and the momentum to write that book came from the frightening thought that the few I knew through my parents could just disappear or die, and there would be no record anywhere of them. Plus, my two children used to just love, and I love to hear children who understand what a nice proverb means, saying it and repeating it in the right context. So that drove me, and it's a sad statement because it means that nothing was being done otherwise for me to take my little time to at least put this in a book. Another point is the very speech, but I'd like to go back to this 1968 one experience that I had going to the band launching, and the top of stage and thing was a rustic place. It was enclosed, you'd use piece of wood and stick that you cut down the road and build a kind of barn look. And the people were paying, if it's $1, I don't know how much it was, but there was people. You never see people like you saw at the band launching. We don't have that at all. We don't know, we understand that the speech band is intimately connected. It was launched at a carnival time where you had the crowning of the king. Well, they didn't say monarch, because the crowning of the king a speech band. And people used to come out, if you see people. And the atmosphere, I don't know if you could ever capture that, was virtually moonlight, was carnival time, and just people around the place. And every now and then you'd see the fire go up for the tambourine warming up. And the thing that stuck in my mind from age 14 was when the show started, the people, the speech, mama, come, give me room, let me pass, give me boy you down and he throw you away, just to come through the crowd to get up to the front of the stage. And then, of course, you had the challenge, the competition. I trying to outdo you with speech. We don't get that. And I try to capture it, document it in a little chapter called Charlie Lee, the Steel Band Pioneer, in the book Tobago in print.
Speech band.
Speech band pioneer.
Yeah.
And these things, as Dr. Bob said, may have gone forever, but John, have been challenging you to have us recreate in the heritage, because look at that, we have the heritage. Tobago is so famous to the speech band, but we don't have a night devoted to the speech band. You're throwing the speech band in little areas, but you all think that is enough for a art form that is so masterful, that defines Tobago.
Yeah. It's a programming note. It is a programming note. As a matter of fact, while you were talking earlier, when you spoke about the extempo, it would be great, just as how we have carnival extempo competitions.
Sure.
It would be great if we develop speech band extempo as a competition. I think that's an excellent idea. And that would be one of the innovative things that we can introduce for this time.
But there's another thing I think that many times we don't know the why we are engaging in these activities, the why for preserving your heritage. And I think the educational system has to be tweaked, because we were born out of the slave experience. We didn't understand the beauty of our culture. In fact, many of our culture, they tell us, was offensive and negative. Look at how England and the bigger countries know the importance of the old practices, the culture, and why the culture is important, and why it must be preserved, and why we must try to stay authentic. And if we innovate in it, must be done tastefully to work into the authentic or the traditional elements. I don't know if that had to be taught, but I think we have to get that appreciation, because why do we engage in heritage now? We like to dance. It comes naturally. We see other people and it's so natural. That is all we know, and we enjoy doing it. But do we understand the other reasons why our culture is important, and we have to try to represent it accurately and properly and preserve it and document? We don't know that. And I think that there's room for that in our education system.
Totally agree. I have a question for Miriam, but before I come to Miriam, Axback, let's talk about the Tobago Tambourine, because I think one of our traditions, and one that I call the endangered species, in that if we don't do something immediately to address the retention of it, I am doing it on my own by trying to do some globalized initiatives. But I'm saying, even as we look at the speech band, you would recall that when we traveled with the speech band and we go away, we can't use coconut branches and fire. So one of the innovative things we had to use was the lights, the theater lights. So I want to weigh in a bit on this Tobago speech band, because I know you have a lot to say on this.
Tambourine.
Tobago Tambourine. My apologies.
While Deborah was talking, and you mentioned the extempo aspect, I was saying that is what Anthony George stood for. Anthony was the kind of speechman that you would pay to have him make a speech on somebody or something event, and somebody would pay to stop him, another person would pay for him to continue, and he would just go on and on and on. Mm-hmm. We have lost that, Anthony died right after the hurricane of 1962. In terms of the tambourine, there are so many views expressed about the tambourine. Yes, we use a hot lamp to do the heating. But you know, there's another innovation that came up, John. This guy, what his name is, Courtney Potts, came up with a way to tune the tambourine using screws.
Okay.
And it works wonders. You know, but the tambourine as a whole has a history that is absolutely beautiful and should be properly documented. The unfortunate thing about all the documentation, what you will hear about the tambourine and all that, is that everything you hear is within a particular circle. When you said I would have a lot to say about it. I honestly don't want to say a lot about it. Because, it was unfortunate to find out that Speyside had a tambourine band led by a guy named Willie Murphy. And that enclave between Belgarden and Glamorgan had some fantastic people. I clearly remember the name Baba Job. And when I actually recommended at a conference in Magdalena that these people should be visited, treated as people, we should recognize them and even treat them like pioneers. The recommendation was accepted, and some other people got the awards. It's disgusting. We treat it as if it's, well, they are wrong, so we use them. That ain't good enough. That isn't good enough. The way we treat culture is definitely on a whole not good enough.
But John, as Axback talking, I remember he has a book, and that book fascinated me because there were some pages in it, Axback, where you showed how the tambourine was made. You remember that book you have there?
Yes.
Now, after I watched that thing, I said, but why can't Tobago define itself in the world with this tambourine and this alongside the speech band? Why aren't we turning out manufacturing tambourine, the Tobago tambourine? If it's anything that we could look at, I don't know what the demand for it, but it just seemed to be a natural fit where you mass produce your tambourines for sale. You have lessons on how to make it, demonstration, and you become known as the tambourine place. Tambourine for your own personal playing, tambourine for speech band, they go hand in hand, and all of that come. And I watch your pictures in that book of the tambourine being made. So there are things, but we're not pulling the strands together and moving on with it. Anybody should read your book and watch where you would set out the process of making the tambourine.
Deborah, the whole thing comes right down to how we see culture, how we value it, whether we place a high value on it, whether we place, in a significant amount of importance on it. And there's a mistake that is being made about the tambourine that I want to point out all the time. We say we invented that drum. I want people to go and look at the bandira. I want them to go and look at all of the African frame drums.
Yeah, the frame drums.
And you will find out that we did not actually invent the drum. We developed it. What we did invent was the tambourine band. There's nowhere else in the world that has a combination of these drums being made into an orchestra and being played the way they are played, and even having the kind of spirituality attached to it.
Well, that just adds so much more to the same point. So that is another element to the tambourine. And if others though cement they claim to having made the tambourine, no harm in us fine-tuning ourselves and projecting this what is happening in the steel band. There's a vacuum, we start moving to take its place. We make it happen.
I love those comments because, I mean, my own idea is that I think we can't just like the Udu drum out of Africa, the congas. We can reach a stage where we use the tambourine in other music. My current project, which is coming out in September, that's the purpose of it, to show how in jazz you can utilize the tambourine and how the tambourine can also be used, how jazz can now come into the music of the tambourine. And the idea is really to kind of help globalize the condition, following up on what you just said, Deborah, that we can one day be able to export Tobago tambourine.
Correct.
You know, so that becomes a thing of us. We want that sound as part of our orchestration.
You're giving me goose pimples.
Yeah, so that is what we have to in the innovation thing in terms of how we market and package and so Axe is on. The other point I want to raise, Axe, and you would recall when UTT came to do, they were trying to do the pedagogy of how you play the instrument. You recall those sessions, and the project broke down. But that idea of how you hold the instrument, which fingers you play it with, what strength you apply, la la la, the kind of rhythms. I don't know if you remember that, Axe.
Of course I do.
Right.
But then I remember at one time too, Mr. Arnold, there was a documentary acts, and the Catersons were in it as well. That was a documentary that used to play a long time, TTT. But I haven't seen it come back. That's something that we should really bring back. That documentary and the creation of
the one with Axe back is on YouTube.
Well, I have to go check.
Yeah, it is on YouTube.
Yeah.
And again, you know, but I think to bring the discussion, let me go to Miriam. Miriam, let's talk about this thing about communities, because you started on that. And the social inclusion, how we got people to communities to buy into heritage and so on, and working with the dances, etc. And I'm painting for you a little story. They used to send myself and many other persons, I'm sure Verlene was in this, to work with some of the villages to polish up their work. And I remember working in a particular village, I wouldn't say which one. And when I come in, they will have like 5 verses, and they're singing all 5 verses of the song the same way. And then I would say, well, can we just add maybe a part just to give it some interest, or maybe can we change up a 3rd verse? So they used to do it. And what was funny is they will do it, and at 9:30 when I leave, they go back to their normal practice. So that used to happen for weeks. They will have what you call the John Arnold practice, where the visitor practice. And then they go back to their whoever in the village, you know. And on the night of the performance, you know which performance is being, which arrangement is done. It's not the visitor arrangement. So I'm only saying that working with the communities, I'm sure others will weigh in. How was it from where you sat?
Working with the communities, I always had a very good experience, and I must mention Cynthia Alfred, Miss Cynthia Alfred, who would have introduced me as a young person into various communities in Tobago as a young dancer coming out of Patience Hill and under the training of Mr. Henry James. In those early years, I was one of the recognized dancers in this space. And one of the things I learned in my Patience Hill community, and from persons like Uncle Henry and Uncle Boyo, and even my father, as a young girl, when we practiced at Patience Hill, and even with my brothers who were drummers, my father ensured that after rehearsal at Patience Hill, we make our way up to Pembroke. Sometimes we'll go to Black Rock and different villages, Bethel. So even as a young person, I was introduced in various communities, helping and assisting with choreography and helping to sometimes direct productions and things like that. I would have worked with Miss Verlin at times, Miss Dr. Bob as well, sorry, at times as well too. Why I think community is important. I would have left Trinidad and Tobago, as I said, in 2005. The heartbeat that I felt in my Patience Hill community and other communities, when I came back, I was not feeling that. There was this inclusiveness in the community, and what I loved as a young person growing up in my community was being able to mix with the elders. Wherever the rehearsal was taking place, if it was at the old Patience Hill RC School Church, so many people gathered there. Before I actually got into the space like dancing and being part of the Best Village production or the Heritage production or what the case might be, we were there seeing, absorbing, listening, learning, and being after introduced to the floor space to participate. And with one thing with Mr. James, he was not a man just to show you movements. You have to understand history. You have to understand history. You have to understand particular costumes for certain dances and particular rhythms. So I was able within my community to learn dance and dance choreography, learn costume construction and design, also learning to play the drum. In areas where we were weak, we would have persons coming in. And I remember Mr. Edgar Davidson, may his soul also rest in peace. He played an integral part with the Patience Hill Community Village Council in helping us in the Heritage Festival and also Best Village. At times, we would have other people. We had, oh my goodness, Mr. Vernon Dennis, Django. Those were people who came in, we embraced, came into our communities. And I think what is happening too, I guess, is the old school training where respect and appreciation was taught. You're not finding that so much again. I don't want to blame, say, the younger generation. I think somewhere along the line, we kind of dropped the baton in passing on information and how we culture and discipline our young people within a space. But community is very important. As Mr. Titus was saying about the tambourine, you could imagine having tambourine developed in every community having a tambourine band. I was saying to Mr. Lawrence Crooks, Brother Watts, that I personally want to learn the tambourine. I want to learn it. Would we be able to do like virtual classes, have the tambourine manufactured if we have to buy them, and we do the virtual tuning learning, and we are able to pass on and preserve that way as well. Village councils.
Don't forget
I just came out from a couple meetings dealing with revitalizing and retooling village councils. Village councils have a very important part to play in their communities because that is where the culture kind of started, under the village council at the community center. And most times these community centers are shut tight. When I came back here in 2018, and persons met me and said, Miriam, nothing is happening in the community, no drum, no dancing. I said, why? Why is this not happening? They don't know. So I did my investigation. I started walking and I reopened the community center for dance, drumming, and drama. 62 persons came into that community center on that night. And before the COVID came in and sort of deter us from doing anything, I ended up with like 40 persons being a part of activities of drumming, dancing, and drama in the community. Community plays an important part in nurturing the young people where our culture is concerned, but it also takes a good leader. That leader necessarily don't have to be someone that is prominent in dance and drama and culture, but just the passion and the initiative that this is what I want for my community and be able to mobilize and work. One of the things I enjoy through years with the Tobago Heritage Festival is being able to participate not only with my community, but participate with Black Rock and Bethel and
Yeah.
Pembroke
The
and
inclusion.
Moriah. I remember as a young person, Mr. James would have taken me into Moriah to help teach the different traditional dances like the heel and toe, the brush back, the reel and the jig. So we need to sort of start the education where we really get back into tutoring dancers, tutoring drummers, dancers remaining in their communities and, really, bringing it to fruition so that we have that preservation of, legacy and persons, things that are handed down so that it would continue. But I am doing my part as I came back to revive. I started a program called Come See Community, where I invited all drummers and dancers in the Tobago space, at the Patientsville Community Center. And we were just sharing. Lekito came with their bamboo. Rhythmic vibration was there. Brother Taya Wigera came teaching us folk song. Dominic there teaching the African rhythm. I invited persons from the United States who was prominent with the West African dancing. I did that on my own, brought them in so that we would not lose the retention and the essence of our African ancestry. And that is what I am presently even doing now, even virtually, and being connected to what a group I'm collaborating with called Arts Overseas, and in the project right now of doing a production called Footprints, Impressions of the African Diaspora. And the initiative idea of Come See Community that I started at Patientsville, and what I explained to the mass of people that came at the community center, we had to start toting things on the outside because there was not enough food. Because I wanted to introduce back to our artists in the space that love and get together that we shared along the years coming through with Best Village and the Tobago Heritage Festival, the get together, the sharing, no animosity against one another, we helping and we building one another. I really want to see that, really see that come back. And we had a good time doing that. And my initiative, discussion, and idea for that program, Come See Community, is that I did it at Patientsville. Now Pembroke could say, okay, let me do it in a space here and invite all the dancers and the drummers. And what was happening, young people were coming and being a part and participating, and they were able to learn right there the history, the movements, and just that moving of togetherness of one people, moving together, learning together, participating together, sharing community. I don't know. It's something about that lies very hard, close to my heart. Unity is important. We come together, we unite, we share, we build, we grow, and we preserve. And there's always room for innovation because we are moving. Times change. But with innovation, we have to try to package our authentic, our traditional product as best as we can so that we do not lose the essence of it. We tie a really innovative, nice bow around it and put some glitters. But when we open that package, we must see the tradition and the authenticity coming out. It is what makes us Tobagonians proud about who we are, our heritage and our culture, our folk art and our customs, and we cannot lose that.
Yeah, thank you very much, I almost said Miriam. Verlene,
Yes.
Just take us back to some of the events. You remember landing at the Colanders, courtship codes. Just take us back to some of those events because our listeners are obviously very interested in this kind of discussion as to some of those early traditional events we hosted.
Yes, and Mr. Titus mentioned that Golden Lane activity.
Yes.
The courtship code.
That's the courtship code.
Powerful production used to take place there, and it was just abandoned. Yes, the landing of the Colanders is another one that we just left. The bouquet ball in Bethel.
Yes.
That one was thrown aside.
Do you remember the Caribbean night?
Caribbean night used to be an excellent night. Yes, I used to invite other people in.
Other countries, yes.
Yes, other parts of the Caribbean to come in for that Caribbean night. We have lost that. Once we had tried something, and I wanted to make this point at Castara, an Amerindian wedding.
Yes.
I was part of it and I thought it went well, but afterwards it was just thrown out.
Yes.
And Amerindian heritage is so much, besides going by the museum and seeing what is there. There's nothing that reminds us of that when we go to the villages. And something that you can look at, the commission could look at, that Amerindian heritage that I think is also very, very, very important, and that you could bring back. We had used to do something, the French in we. That happened a few times, and then that was thrown away as well. There used to be one up at Study Park that used to be.
Yes, but you remember, Verlene, we actually built, and something that really hurts my heart to this day, because we came up with this Tobago Heritage Village.
Yes.
You remember that village in Study Park? That was it. I thought that was such a missed opportunity. Something that could have really been a real tourism site now.
Yes, that should have been there. There's a flagship event now. Yes.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to comment just briefly on that community aspect that Miriam talks about. Because we had moved from a stage, after a stage where when we had so many groups that had excellent groups as well, and the groups used to go to the communities to help them. We have to start to develop the talents within the communities.
Yes,
we have to make a strong link between the school in the community and the community itself, so that we have the young ones coming and learning. So now sometimes you go to a community and you could hardly find people in the community participating in the heritage. We have to go back to the time when you used to fill the center with people from the community. We have to start to take away the keys from the people who used to hold the key and lock up the center. I experienced that, and not to dance in the road. So all those things we have to look at to bring back that sense of community and let the people in the community participate, rather than you have to bring a group from here to do that. Yes, you can invite people. I'm not saying no, but they shouldn't be part of the core of what you're doing. The core must come from the community, and you invite other people to come to as a little props here and there, not to control what is happening in the community. So we have to bring back that sense of community and community participation in the Tobago Heritage Festival.
Folks, talking with the four of you, we could talk for the next 2 hours, right? Well, coming right down to the end, there are two things I want to touch on. One, we know that now with the technology, one of the things, I don't know if you looked at our emancipation story, but what it's showing now is there's a whole new bunch of creatives, right, that are making a big difference. Videographers, graphic designers, script writers, I mean, people who are doing things really, really, really classy. So what you have now is you have content with the art, and then you have the young persons who are now showing you how to make shorts on YouTube, shorts on TikTok, shorts on, and how do we marry this technology, this whole sense of modern communication, right? They now say that 75% of persons look at their phone for video content, right? Video marketing is now the thing. How do we marry and hold that, which may cause us, do you see that as being a problem with the authentic productions? Do we still need to find a way now of making that a little more snazzy, a little more, so that it fit the stage rather than the authentic steps that we would get? So, I mean, let's get some comments. I'm all for. Ax, you shoot first.
Well, I really appreciate the kind of work that I see coming out of these young producers, if you will. I like the technological aspect, but I insist you have to know what you are putting into it in order to get what you want out of it. we can't go back to the days of the bamboo tent and all that. But I really feel that some facility must be provided for live performances, and I don't think I'm seeing that. I know that Shawpack is not it. We need facilities both in Windward and in the Western End where people can go and have their performances in a little more intimate setting than what we have at Shawpack, for instance. I really like the technology because you can have so many special effects and all that, and it would add, it would enhance. But we need to be prepared to put the material in so that we could get the material out.
Yes, Berlin?
Yes, and I think it could, there's a good marriage between the technology and the authenticity. You can do it. Because I saw what I saw for Emancipation. I saw the dances, I saw costumes that looked really good. But what you do to enhance it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the era we're in. So you create the dance as authentic as you could, and you use your special effects. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think both could happen together.
So, Berlin, do you think we should have guardians of the field, meaning we should have coordinators that just insist on making sure that we tweak these things to maintain the authentic nature of it, or to make sure we're doing the traditional things? For example, a step. If we see a step not looking right, should we have that, or should we say, no, it's open territory?
No, it's not really. I don't think it should be really open territory. There are some steps that you have to maintain. You can't change a jig step to anything else. You can't change reel to anything else or brush back. That's what it is. And somebody, Miriam mentioned the belly looking like piqué. You can't make out the difference. Belly is belly, piqué is piqué. So instead of having guardians, we have to do more training within the community.
Yes,
correct.
Have that point person in the community who will be able to be that guardian. Because if you always have to send somebody from outside in, you wouldn't be able to develop what you want within. You have to develop people within the communities to be able to manage what is happening there. So not always. You could have people to go and observe and so on, but let's get the guardians right in the communities.
Yeah. Deborah, your take on the technology and the marriage?
Yeah, well, my view is that we have all types in our society. So where you have those who are doing their productions outside of the traditional, etc., there are others because people have interest. I have an interest in the old way and the old time way. You will find among many of those producers or production people who have an interest in incorporating the traditional and the old time way. You would never get away from that. What we have to do, I think, is let the word be out, the incentives for people to produce using the material of our old culture or heritage. So you directly encourage them by whatever means, and as you release some funds to people, they suddenly know that they were enthusiasts of culture all the time. So we can do that. We want to encourage that creativity, by the way. We love it. We love when young people with the original mind and brain use their skills in any way once it's not honest and once it's not dishonest or anything on the negative side. So let's really encourage that, but we want to encourage further those who are willing to produce material that take in our culture and that showcase. And that's another thing, going back to community. The community is so important that I feel one of the biggest innovations of the festival was, you see, when we had Best Village, we all had to go to the central point in town and go to Trinidad. But you see the staging of it in these villages. That is the biggest, the greatest innovation. And for me, and I think it developed and empowered our community. I don't think we've capitalized enough on it, but it was good, and it should be sustained and encouraged. So let us not lose sight of the fact that in these villages are lurking some of the best cooks.
Yes,
What
yes.
we doing with all them food we could we really haven't used what we generated, you know. I don't know, we lost our way, we let politics make we lose we way. I don't know when we could bring us back to where we ought to be. And that's why I want to go into the schools to see if we could salvage anything inside of there.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Miriam, your take on the technology and question?
Technology, I am welcoming and encouraging of technology, because we can't remain the same only way, of course, the same way all the time. Of course, changes will come about, and we are seeing that even faced with the COVID pandemic. It has even forced me to become tech savvy now, and even earlier there was some difficulty in trying to get organized to come on. So education in that area with our young ones, partnering with some of us, the more mature ones, is a very good incentive. It's a very good incentive. We have to encourage them, because one of the initiative mission of this Tobago Heritage Festival is to pass on. It's to pass on. And they say young people not embraced in their communities will burn their communities down. We cannot shun them. We cannot shun them. They have ideas as well too. We have to listen to them, always have that opening ear. And we also have to be careful how we guide and instruct, and sometimes discipline, that we don't insult and that we don't turn them away from wanting to be a part of programs like the Tobago Heritage Festival, the Best Village programs, and things like that. But yes, we have to welcome and we have to encourage it. And yes, we can see technology. We have seen it last year with the Tobago Heritage Festival. It was nicely done. And again, this year, thumbs up to that Roots production. And I felt, it felt so close and so real, and I know that is a lot of the young people involved there. And yes, we have to encourage them, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's always room for creativity, even within the heritage aspect of the showcase or the competition, where I think someone said it earlier, where we may want to pay close attention to authenticity and tradition. We also have to leave room for creativity and innovation. Because one thing as a dancer, and some of the early dancers like myself, one of the disadvantage that we didn't have was that overall principal training as a dancer, that we concentrated on, or was mostly trained as folk dancers. And I always encourage young dancers in this space, even though I am not able to teach that ballet, contemporary, modern type dance, I am not able to offer that physically to my dancers, to my students. I pay instructors to come in so that they are able to develop holistically on a wider base where dance is concerned. So all of that come with also the training as well too. It's not just, okay, well, it's folk I know and it's folk I teach it. No, that is being ignorant. You have to understand your space and see how things are moving, what is growing, and give your performers, your dancers, your students the opportunity. And that is in the aspect of dance, develop them in all levels of dance.
Thank you very much, Miriam. My friends,
John,
go ahead.
There's a point I wanted to raise before we close. You
Yes.
know, Stanley spoke about the idea of having students, university students, come from abroad, be participant observers, get credits for their work and that kind of thing here. I think it is something that should be revisited and revisited seriously and quickly. Because even some people are saying we should use the Heritage Festival as a means of selling some form of education. John, this is a viable opportunity. This is something we should look at seriously.
I actually shared that with a friend yesterday, Ats. But folks, we've just crossed the hour and a half, and this was supposed to be an hour, but you realize, and I haven't even touched 90% of my questions. So you know that there's no way we can do this. We'll probably have to ask for a part 2 some other time. But let me just give you all a closer. Let me thank you, first of all, for being part of this webinar, Tobago Festival Commission Limited. All platforms will have this curated and shown for the next year, for many years to come. So this becomes really good archival material. But I'm going to give everybody a 30-second closer. What would you like to see the Tobago Festival Commission do, having regard to all that you've heard this evening? Just give us in 30 seconds at least 1 or 2 points, nothing more, that you think we should focus on, and by extension, the Tobago House of Assembly and the board, the board of directors, in terms of moving forward with policy and guidance and so on. Verlene, you go first.
Right. I think the festival should encourage every single community in Tobago to participate. There are some villages that have not been featured for a very long time or never featured at all. So whatever the timetabling will be, maybe require a little tweaking of your timetable. But because with that, we're going to remove some of the criminals, we can find something more meaningful to do. So we should expand the festival, schedule it over a wider period, over a year, we heard that before, or whatever. But encourage each village to have a heritage group, a heritage production at some time during the year.
Thank you very much, Verlene. Ats, let me hear your thoughts. 30 seconds.
Definitely, I think training is a massive undertaking that we should get into right now. And we have to get this view across to the people that heritage means more than that show, that event where you go and enjoy yourself. We got to get that out of the system. We have to make people understand that heritage means more than that, and we have to try to monetize heritage. Otherwise, we will keep spending money all the time, with the same result all the time. I think training has to be undertaken, and I really think that a kind of awareness strategy has to go in place.
Deborah, your closer, 30 seconds.
Let creativity reign. Let us encourage people to create and to get ideas. But most of all, let us seek to put back the energy into our very lives. I find we just are sinking into our malaise, and the pandemic hasn't helped. We just seem to be laid back and waiting, if it's a death or for the pandemic to pass. We need to get up and get again. We need to generate interest and generate ideas and things happening in communities, in our lives, in our families, every place. That's what I would like to see. More energy in Tobago.
Beautiful, passionate closer there. All right, Miriam, you're last but not least, your closer.
I agree as well to training as a dance instructor, choreographer, training in the space and the inclusiveness, some more with the stalwarts or the matriarchs, or we want to call them the old school persons in the space, that you all don't exclude us, because we are here, we are still willing to support, and we are still willing to share. I also agree on allowing creativity in this space. We can put a cap on the young people ideas, and there should be a space within the festival that allows for our young people to be creative, and us even as the old school ones as well to emerge as well to and participate in that creativity. Because once we intend to remain in this space, we will also have to grow and understand what is changing and what is becoming innovative in the space as well, in order to keep up and to move forward and to broaden our horizon. I just want to end to thank you, Mr. Jananal, and the festival, the Tobago Heritage Festivals committee for having me here with such a exclusive panelists. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish the festival all the best moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those sentiments. Let me thank Dr. Verlene Bob, Brother Rod Axbach Titus, Mrs. Deborah Moore Miggins, and Miriam Scott. This was educational, inspiring, plenty information, and certainly entertaining. And I really want to thank all of you for your participation this evening. To our listeners or viewers, want to thank you for being a part of this webinar. And let me say on behalf of the board and members of staff and our sponsors and all those working in the background, good people like Kimmy and Antonia and Mark and Jana and so on, want to thank all of you for being a part of this production today. And we thank you for viewing the Tobago Festivals Network.
Take a shot, take a shot, take a shot, get back to your life. Take a shot, take a shot, take a shot, get back to your life. Take a shot, take a shot, take a shot, get back to your life. Take a shot, take a shot, take a shot, get back to your life.
A message from Republic Bank.